Hello and welcome back to the second in our series on shillelagh. Last week was very much more of an introduction, a bit of an idea about what shillelagh is and where it comes from. Today we're actually going to get into it with how we actually use the shillelagh. Now there's multiple styles of shillelagh. Two main ones is antrim bata, which tends to have a guard where the club is raised or back, much more like boxing, and it's used more as a single-handed cudgel. That's not the style we're going to look at. It fits very well with several other things, but it's not. It's a bit similar to Vignette in the way that you use it some of the times. So instead, we're going to be looking at the Doyle family shillelagh, which is a very different thing entirely, and therefore I think it's more fun than just having stuff that's a bit similar. So for this, instead of holding it with one hand, we're going to be using it in two hands. So if we imagine that it's in thirds, our hands want to be at those kind of thirds there. So I should have a third of the stick, third of the stick, third of the stick, with my hands in the middle. My lead foot is going to go forward, so I am armed, so I tend to want to have the weapon in front of me, as opposed to an offhand stance that I'd normally use if I was fighting unarmed. So we're going to use more of an armed stance. Feet are, there's two versions of how you can use the feet. I'm just stepping back so you can see. We can either use the boxing stance where they're in parallel. It keeps my hips very square on and forward. I have no problem with this. It's not what I've trained. I find it kind of uncomfortable, but I have no real issue with twisting the foot round to about 45 degrees so I can sink into it a bit more. This is more what I'm used to and works perfectly well for a shillelagh. So whatever floats your boat on that one. We've then got our hands up and they come up round about equal to your shoulders. So I'm set in, bend my knees a little, and the guard is out in front of me here. And I want to be trying to flex that guard the whole time, as if I was trying to break this stick forward. So I've got it kind of under tension. And that's my guard that I want to be working in here. So when I'm going to do an attack, the first attack we're going to look at would be very similar to something like a jab in boxing. What I'm going to do is let go with my left hand, because I'm right-handed. I'm going to let go with my left hand. And because it's under tension, it will automatically fire that bit of the stick out. So, the problem is I don't want to try and stop this and pull it back with the muscles in my arm, and I don't want to have this constantly flinging around where I'm liable to hit myself, or it's constantly having to move in big arcs. Instead, what I'm going to do when I fire this out is I let the cane bounce off the back of my forearm. So that acts as a stopping, as a break, and it bounces off that and comes straight back to my hand. So instead of these kind of back or big circles around here, I can actually fire it out and come straight back again. Boom, 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 like that. So that's how I'm going to use that jab. It also has the advantage that even though my right hand is moving, the attack is going to come in from my left side. So it has this weird crossover that takes people a while to get used to. Obviously, I can do the same from the other side, so if that's my jab, that would be my cross. Yeah? Now, normally when I do the jab, I'm going to push this shoulder forward, yeah, and bring my hand back a little bit so everything gets extended out forward. So from here, so I get the maximum range on it, and come back. Bounces off my forearm and back. When I'm going the other side, I still do that, letting it bounce off the arm and back, but I've got to twist my hips a bit more into it. So I've got to push this hip forward, and again, there's two ways you can do this. You can do this in what's called the traditional way, in which case, when I throw it, I'm going to kind of almost flop that foot over so that I've got a bit of extra range on it and come back again. Again, I don't particularly like that. I prefer there's more of a kind of kung fu version, as it were, where what I'm going to do is, as I throw it, I'm going to bend both my knees and twist both my legs round so that I can get this kind of stance. But here, I'm actually got quite a lot of stability. Boom. And as that's taught by Doyle himself, I'm going to assume it's okay, because he's like the authority on this. So that's the way we're going to look at it. So straight, straight, cross, and back again. So I can get quite quick combination of strikes coming out in this direction. I can also do these at different heights. Whilst I can do these at this kind of shoulder height, it's not particularly useful, because if I'm fighting somebody else, that's exactly where their stick and hands are. So the three target lines tend to be slightly raised as if I'm going for the head, slightly lower as if I was going for the side or the ribs, and then right down as if I'm going for the kneecaps. And those are really my main targets: kneecaps, ribs, head. So I can get used to doing training drills where I strike at each of those locations, always coming back to my guard in between. And that's really it on the striking side of things. There isn't really any big downward strike. There is some other stuff once we get in closer, but we'll look at that once we come to the time. The only other one is there is a big uppercut, so I'll finish with that one. So we've got all of our usual attacks here, but if I do a straight followed by a cross, rather than coming back to guard, I stay in this cross position and let the tip drop down and come back to my other hand. From here, I can throw this back and unwind my whole body into a huge uppercut. Yeah, it leaves me wide open, but it is a huge power strike. So if you can get it in, game ender, you've won, but it does leave you open. So to give you an idea of the power that's in this, we get a straight, cross, uppercut. That is going to be a killer move. Yeah, that's going to, under the chin, into the stomach, into the nads, anything, it's going to really kind of mess everything up. So that's it for striking. So it's really bouncing back off the arm. That's really the important bit, and getting those shoulders pushed forward and your hips forward. So next week we'll have a look at what we're going to do about defending these. We're going to start looking at that side of things, and hopefully that will all start to make a bit more sense as well. Because it's so different to a lot of other martial arts, I really wanted to take my time going over the striking. So hopefully this video has made sense for you, and I'll catch you next week for the next one.